on, bud.
Everyone thinks humans couldn't survive extreme heat before air conditioning was invented. But entire civilizations thrived in deserts hotter than Death Valley using cooling systems that would make your smart thermostat look like a child's toy. The most shocking part? We deliberately stopped using their best technique. Before your grandparents had the luxury of cranking up the AC, they mastered the art of staying cool through pure ingenuity. And trust me, some of their tricks were way smarter than anything we do today. Take awnings, for instance. These weren't just pretty decorations hanging over windows like some fancy restaurant setup. Canvas awnings could slash heat gain by up to 65% on south-facing windows. That's better performance than most people get from their expensive window tints. The secret was simple physics. Block the sun, but let the air flow. Of course, maintaining these fabric shields was like having a high-maintenance pet. They needed constant cleaning and would wear out faster than a comedian's welcome at a family reunion. But here's where things get clever. Smart homeowners figured out cross-ventilation long before engineers gave it a fancy name. Open the right windows and doors at opposite ends of your house, and boom, you've got nature's own air conditioning system. Those evening breezes would sweep through like a cool, refreshing guest who actually knows when to leave. The only downside? Leaving windows open all night made some folks nervous about security, but honestly, burglars probably stayed home too. It was too hot to commit crimes. Then there's the white roof trick that even the White House used. Well, maybe not literally, but painting rooftops white or light colors worked like wearing a white shirt instead of black on a scorching day. Studies show the simple paint job could reduce air conditioning needs by 15%. The catch was repainting every few years, but hey, at least you got a good workout climbing up there. Now, sleeping porches were pure genius. Why sweat through stuffy indoor nights when you could sleep under the stars? These weren't just porches with delusions of grandeur. They were purpose-built outdoor bedrooms. Sure, you had to deal with the occasional cricket concert or neighborhood dog's midnight serenade, but the trade-off was worth it. People in the South and Midwest swore by them, and who could forget ceiling fans? These spinning saviors created a wind chill effect that made you feel several degrees cooler without actually changing the temperature. It's like having a gentle breeze follow you around the house, minus the actual weather. Installation was trickier than assembling furniture today. No YouTube tutorials back then. But once up, they were energy-saving champions. Meanwhile, thick adobe walls and sky-high ceilings turned homes into natural refrigerators. Hot air rose to those lofty heights while you stayed comfortable below. Winter heating. Bills? Well, that was next season's problem. But the real game changer wasn't just about keeping houses cool. It was about keeping bodies cool from the inside out. And that's where things got really creative. Now here's where things get really clever. People back then didn't just suffer through the heat. They became masters of manipulating their environment with some surprisingly effective tricks. Take awnings, for instance. These weren't just fancy decorations hanging over windows. Canvas awnings could block up to 65% of heat gain on south-facing windows. That's like having a personal shadow following your house around all day. The beauty was in their simplicity, just stretched fabric doing what expensive window treatments do today. Well, mostly. The downside? Try explaining to your wife why you're up on a ladder every weekend cleaning bird droppings off canvas that's been baked in the sun. But the real genius was in cross-ventilation. Smart homeowners would open windows and doors on opposite sides of their homes to create natural air tunnels. It's like turning your entire house into a wind instrument, except instead of making music, it made life bearable. Those old shotgun houses in the South weren't designed that way by accident. You could literally fire a shotgun through the front door and it would sail clean through the back without hitting a wall. Perfect for airflow, questionable for privacy. And who could overlook ceiling fans? These spinning saviors created wind chill effects that made rooms feel degrees cooler. Picture a gentle breeze that follows you around the room like a loyal pet. The installation was about as fun as assembling furniture from Sweden, but once up, they were workhorses that could run all day without breaking the bank. The weird part is how many of these old-school solutions are making comebacks today. Architects are rediscovering thick walls and high ceilings. Homeowners are installing awnings and painting roofs white. Even sleeping porches are trending again. But perhaps the most ingenious, cooling method involves something that required zero construction or installation, and it's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. Those nighttime hours were absolutely brutal before air conditioning came along. You know that feeling when you're tossing and turning in bed, kicking off blankets every 5 minutes? Well, our ancestors had that figured out with sleeping porches. These weren't just regular porches where you'd sip lemonade during the day. Nope. Families would literally drag their mattresses outside onto screened-in porches when the heat became unbearable indoors. Makes sense, right? The night air was always cooler than stuffy bedrooms, and honestly, sleeping under the stars beat counting sheep any day. But here's where things get interesting. While folks were getting creative with outdoor sleeping arrangements, the real game changers were happening right above their heads. Ceiling fans started spinning their way into American homes like clockwork. These weren't the fancy remote-controlled models we have today. Oh no. You had to get up and pull a chain like some kind of medieval lighting system. The beauty of ceiling fans was simple physics. They didn't actually cool the air, but they moved it around enough to make you feel about 4 degrees cooler. Kind of like having a gentle breeze follow you around the house, except it made that soft whooshing sound that could put you to sleep faster than your uncle's fishing stories. Then there's the architectural genius our great-grandparents lived with daily. Those old Victorian homes with ceilings so high you needed a ladder just to change a light bulb? That wasn't just for show. Hot air rises, basic science. So those 12-foot ceilings created a natural buffer zone between your head and all that trapped heat. The walls told an even smarter story. Thick brick or adobe walls worked like natural insulators, keeping the scorching afternoon sun from turning homes into ovens. Sure, heating those places in winter was probably like trying to warm up a cathedral, but summer comfort was worth the trade-off. Well, let's not forget the refreshment stations that kept people sane during heat waves. Every neighborhood had that one pharmacy that doubled as a soda fountain, serving up ice-cold drinks that were basically liquid relief. People would line up like it was the hottest concert in town, except instead of music, they were there for cherry cokes and root beer floats. Home ice boxes became as essential as smartphones are today. Families would ration their ice supply like it was made of gold, because in a way, it was. That chunk of ice delivered by the Iceman could mean the difference between spoiled milk and a decent breakfast. And the weird part is how these old-school methods still work today. Those same ceiling fans are spinning in million-dollar homes, and architects are rediscovering the magic of high ceilings and thick walls. But even with all these clever tricks, people still needed ways to cool their entire bodies down when the heat became overwhelming. The art of staying cool wasn't just about fancy gadgets or clever tricks. Sometimes the smartest solutions were literally built right into the walls and ceilings above people's heads. Thick walls made from adobe, brick, or stone acted like nature's own thermostat. These materials absorbed heat during the blazing afternoon sun, then slowly released it after temperatures dropped at night. It's like having a personal climate buffer that worked around the clock. My grandmother's old farmhouse had walls so thick you could practically set up camp in the windowsills. Those walls kept the summer heat at bay better than some modern homes do today. But here's where things get really clever. High ceilings weren't just for show or making rooms look fancy. Hot air rises. That's basic physics even a 15-year-old knows. So builders created these tall spaces where all that stuffy heated air could float up and away from where people actually lived and breathed. Walking into one of those old Victorian homes with 12-foot ceilings felt like stepping into a natural cooling tower. Well, there was a catch. These architectural marvels that kept summers bearable turned into absolute nightmares come winter. Heating a house with thick walls and sky-high ceilings? Good luck with that electric bill. It's like trying to warm up a cathedral with a hairdryer. Then there's the genius of strategic shading. Before anyone invented window tints or fancy UV coatings, people stretched canvas awnings over their windows and porches. These weren't just pretty decorations. They could slash heat gain by up to 65% on those brutal south-facing windows. The canvas blocked direct sunlight while still letting cooling breezes flow through. Canvas awnings needed constant babying, though. Rain, wind, and sun would beat them up faster than a boxer's punching bag. Homeowners spent weekends cleaning, patching, and eventually replacing these fabric shields. But when August rolled around with its merciless heat, every bit of maintenance felt worth it. The evening brought its own cooling strategy. Smart homeowners mastered cross-ventilation like seasoned chess players, opened the right windows and doors at exactly the right time, and cooler night air would flow through the house like a gentle river. Houses were actually designed with this airflow in mind. Those long, narrow shotgun houses popular in the South weren't just quirky architecture. They were cooling machines. Of course, leaving windows and doors open all night made some folks nervous about security. Makes sense, right? Trading safety concerns for a decent night's sleep wasn't always an easy choice. These time-tested methods proved something interesting. The best cooling solutions often came from understanding how nature actually works, not fighting against it. Speaking of working with nature's rhythms, people discovered that timing their daily activities just right could make all the difference in beating the heat. Cross-ventilation wasn't just opening a window and hoping for the best. Smart homeowners turned their houses into wind tunnels by strategically positioning openings on opposite sides of their homes. When evening rolled around and temperatures finally dropped, they'd throw open doors and windows like they were conducting an orchestra of airflow. The physics were brilliantly simple. Hot air rises, cool air sinks, and moving air feels cooler than still air. Makes sense, right? Families would map out their home's wind patterns better than meteorologists, knowing exactly which windows to crack first and when to open the back door for maximum effect. Southern homes mastered this art form. Those famous shotgun houses weren't just architectural quirks. You could literally fire a shotgun through the front door and it would sail clean out the back without hitting a wall. Talk about commitment to airflow. The design forced air to move in one continuous stream, creating natural air conditioning that worked around the clock. But here's where it gets interesting. Cross-ventilation required a level of neighborhood trust we rarely see today. Leaving windows and doors open all night, that took some serious faith in your community. Security systems back then were basically hoping your dog was a light sleeper. Well, the evening ritual became almost ceremonial. Families would walk through their homes at sunset, opening strategic windows like they were preparing for battle against the heat. The sound of sash windows sliding up echoed through neighborhoods as everyone performed their cooling dance. And the weird part is, this method often worked better than you'd expect. A well-ventilated house could drop 10 degrees just from smart window positioning. No electricity required, no moving parts to break, and the only maintenance was remembering to close everything before the next day's heat arrived. Modern builders are rediscovering these principles, calling them passive cooling strategies, and charging premium prices for what great-grandma knew instinctively. Some things never change. We love making simple solutions sound complicated. The most successful cross-ventilation happened on corner lots where homes caught breezes from multiple directions. Those houses became the neighborhood's cool spots, literally and socially. Everyone suddenly wanted to visit when the temperature soared. Night breezes carried more than just cool air. They brought the sounds and smells of the neighborhood. You knew Mrs. Henderson was baking bread at dawn, heard the Johnsons' baby crying at midnight, and could tell when someone was burning trash in their backyard. Privacy was the price of comfort. Then there's the morning routine. Racing around to close everything before the sun turned your wind tunnel back into an oven. Timing was everything, and experience. Homeowners developed an almost supernatural sense of when to seal up the house. But even the smartest ventilation couldn't solve every cooling challenge, especially when the sun turned rooftops into radiating heat sources. Let's not forget about one of the smartest tricks people used to beat the heat: thick walls and sky-high ceilings. Houses back then weren't just built differently because architects had nothing better to do. They knew something we're just rediscovering today. Those thick adobe walls in the Southwest, they worked like a massive thermal battery. During the scorching day, they'd slowly absorb heat instead of letting it rush straight into your living room. Then at night, when temperatures dropped, those same walls would release that stored heat back outside. Pretty clever for people who supposedly didn't know anything about science, right? The thick brick walls you see on old Victorian homes served the same purpose. Some of these walls were 18 inches thick. That's thicker than most people's mattresses. While modern homes with their thin walls turned into ovens by noon, these old houses stayed pleasantly cool well into the afternoon. But here's where it gets really smart. Those impossibly high ceilings weren't just for show. Hot air rises, and these old-timers knew it. With 12 to 14-foot ceilings, all that stuffy heated air would float up and away from where people were actually living and breathing. Down below, things stayed much more comfortable. Well, there was a catch. Winter heating bills would make your wallet weep. Those same thick walls that kept summer heat out also made it nearly impossible to warm the place up when temperatures dropped. And all that lovely hot air you wanted in December, it still rose straight to the ceiling, leaving you shivering down below. The weird part is how we forgot this wisdom for decades. During the mid-1900s, everyone got obsessed with low ceilings and thin walls. Cheaper to build, they said. More efficient, they claimed. Then we wondered why our energy bills skyrocketed every summer. Some of the most beautiful examples still stand today. Those grand southern plantation homes with their soaring ceilings and thick columns, built like natural air conditioners. Southwestern haciendas with their massive adobe walls, still keeping families cool after 200 years. Even some old farmhouses knew the secret. Thick stone foundations, tall rooms, and walls built to last. Modern green architects are finally catching on again. They call it passive cooling now, like they invented something revolutionary. Really, they're just copying great-grandpa's blueprint. Makes sense, right? These techniques worked so well that entire regions developed their signature architectural styles around staying cool. The thick walls kept the heat where it belonged, outside. And speaking of keeping things where they belonged, there was another ingenious method people used. That didn't require rebuilding your entire house. Something much simpler that could transform any room in minutes, and chances are your grandmother had the secret stashed away in her linen closet. When summer nights turned stuffy bedrooms into ovens, our ancestors had a brilliant solution that would make modern parents have a heart attack. They moved their beds outside. Well, not exactly outside, but close enough. Sleeping porches became the ultimate cool-down strategy in the early 1900s. These weren't just regular porches with a mattress thrown on them. They were specifically designed outdoor rooms, screened in and positioned to catch every possible breeze. Think of them as nature's air conditioning units, but with a much better view of the stars. The whole family would migrate to these porches when temperatures soared. Grandpa would be snoring away while a gentle breeze rustled through the screens, probably sleeping better than most of us do today in our climate-controlled caves. Makes sense, right? But here's where it gets interesting. These porches weren't just about comfort. They were considered healthier too. Doctors actually prescribed sleeping outdoors for everything from tuberculosis to general wellness. Fresh air was the miracle cure of the day, and sleeping porches delivered it all night long. Of course, there were some drawbacks our ancestors had to deal with. Every cricket, owl, and neighborhood dog became your personal alarm clock. And let's not forget the occasional raccoon visitor who thought your porch looked like prime real estate. But honestly, most folks preferred dealing with nature's soundtrack over melting into their mattresses. The design of these porches was pure genius. They were typically built on the second floor to catch upper-level breezes and positioned on the house's coolest side, usually north or east. Some families got so fancy they had retractable canvas walls for privacy or protection from light rain. Then, there's the social aspect nobody talks about. Sleeping porches created this weird communal bedtime experience. Families would lie there chatting as they cooled down, sharing stories and watching fireflies dance around the yard. Try getting that kind of bonding time when everyone's locked away in their individual air-conditioned rooms. The really clever homeowners installed sleeping porches with roll-down screens and adjustable awnings. These weren't just thrown-together additions. They were architectural features that added serious value to homes. Real estate agents of the day actually marketed houses based on their sleeping porch quality. And here's the kicker. Sleeping porches are making a comeback. Modern families are rediscovering what their great-grandparents knew all along. Sometimes the best way to beat the heat is to work with nature instead of against it. Well, that covers nighttime comfort, but what about keeping cool during those blazing afternoon hours when the sun felt like it had a personal vendetta against your house? Our resourceful ancestors had some surprisingly effective architectural tricks up their sleeves that builders today are scrambling to rediscover.